Hi guys, welcome back to another video. Today we're doing Artober Day 1. I made my own prompt list this year. I didn't really post it anywhere just because I don't really want to make a super cute graphic. I tried, didn't end up looking that cute, so I'll just tell you what they are as I do them. So Day 1 was jack-o'-lantern, and I have this nice little reference image here. This is a royalty-free image, by the way. And yeah, we did this on stream, which I plan to do for all of the month of October. We're going to do at least 5 art streams because there are 5 Wednesdays in the month of October. So that'll be fun. We started out by swatching our colors. I was thinking, man, didn't I just use a whole bunch of these colors recently? I did. Yeah, for the pumpkins, for the cut pumpkin videos. So you can go see those on my channel, and you'll probably recognize a lot of colors. A few colors were different, not that many though, but a lot of them were all my favorite oranges. Love a good orange. Orange is my favorite color. And we got into it. So I started with the lightest color. I started with pearl white. This is a pearl white like can-do marker. Can-do is a 100 yen shop here in Japan. Love their alcohol markers. They don't have the largest range of colors, but this is one of my favorite base colors for anything that's sort of like brown or orange or beige. And then I layered on top of that with a bit of a Copic E51. And then we just kept going from light to dark, switched to the ohuhus and tried to get the ridges in. My goal was not to make this hyper realistic or anything, but to make it look like a real pumpkin rather than what I've done in more recent years every time I do a jack-o'-lantern for Halloween, which I've been making new jack-o'-lanterns or a jack-o'-lantern set every year for Halloween for the last 3 or 4 years. And they were really stylized, like cartoony. This one I want it to look like more like it's an actual carved pumpkin, you know what I mean? Like it's not a cartoon exactly, but we can exaggerate some things, right? So I'm actually not sure if the pumpkin in this image is 100% real or if it's a Halloween decoration. I can't really tell, but it's fine. Doesn't really matter. I think it looked cute in the end. But yeah, I went in with all the same colors, basically all over, just to make everything look cohesive. And then once I started adding the slightly darker colors, that's when I started limiting where I was putting everything. So we started off pretty yellow, and then as we as we got into the darker shadows, I started adding more like reddish colors. So really vibrant oranges. And I'm not the biggest fan of like super bright colors. So I think layering those really red oranges on top of these more toned down yellows, these cream sort of colors, actually helped to tone them down a little bit, not hurt my eyeballs. And I liked it a lot. That's just the vibe I'm going for. A little more like it's an old pumpkin on a gloomy October day, which is when I was filming this. So if you see not great lighting and a bunch of shadows from where I had to turn on the lamps, no you didn't, just shh, shh. It was October 1st, and it felt like October 1st finally in Tokyo. Tokyo's been so hot, and finally it was a gloomy, rainy, cold day in Tokyo. So the lighting was not the greatest, but the atmosphere was perfect. Okay, so this is the part where I started getting excited because once we started doing like the eyes and the deeper shadows, it really started looking a bit more 3D and coming together. The eyes just really got my motivation to the ceiling. I was like, man, is this really looking like a pumpkin? Like, I know we still have to build up a lot of the contrast to make it really look 3D, but it wasn't really standing out to me yet. But this, man, with that darker color, and then everything was blending relatively smoothly, and I was like, oh heck yeah, that looks like a pumpkin. So I was excited. I was excited for the nose as well, because you can see there's sort of highlights in the nose, and so I was just waiting. I was waiting the whole time until the end where I could do those little highlights in the nose, and I knew it would really come together. So, not much to say. My usual process, right, going from light to dark, and at this point we were putting in pretty much the darkest shadows, right? So, I wanted to make sure I was really blending like that darkest. This is technically the second darkest shade or color in the whole palette, right? But the third darkest, I guess, I wanted to really blend into it just to make sure it didn't look like a void, which can be fun and like cool, but I wanted it to look like it was either capturing a little sunlight or maybe there was a tiny little candle in there. So I don't think it looks exactly like the reference image, which was not the goal really, but we wanted it to look, again, a little different from previous years. So I think we achieved that for sure. We got this texture going on. I tried not to make anything too smooth because I wanted you to see the lumpy bumpiness of like the texture of the pumpkin. The what do you call those? The grooves and the bumps, and I think it was coming together. Of course, when you're using alcohol markers or any kind of alcohol ink, it goes on darker and then dries later, right? So as it dries, it gets a little bit lighter. So that's why I try to be a little light-handed when I go in with darks, just to see how dark they're actually. Like, if you can always add more darker shades, but you can never lighten. At least it's quite difficult to lighten unless you layer something like colored pencil on top, which I do end up doing. And I did use not a colorless blender this time, but there was one part on the eye, on the right side, so the left eye, where I accidentally brought the shadow down a little too far. And I was like, man, I really wanted to preserve that place where like the sun hits. And so I went in with like the lightest color basically, and I just like scrubbed the heck out of it with the nib. And it did lighten the color quite a bit. So that worked out in the end. I didn't actually have to go over with any colored pencil in that spot, like I thought I'd have to. At this point, we're going in with colored pencil again. We did this at the beginning, as you saw. I sketched things out with pencil, like graphite pencil. Then I went in with colored pencil just so I could basically see what I was doing. You don't want to go directly over graphite pencil with alcohol markers because it will smudge it. So that's why I erased most of it and then went over the colored pencil with the markers. But I always go back in the end with more colored pencil, ideally a little more dark, especially because alcohol ink tends to lift it a little bit. So we just defined things. We made it look a little more 3D by sort of gradually blending it around the edges. And then the best part was this highlight. I used this paint pen. So juicy, a little too juicy, so the stem got a little too white because it kind of exploded. And then we added that texture I really wanted, like the ridges, with this lighter colored pencil. I signed it and did a couple last minute touches, and that was it. Thank you all for watching. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!